We are in Psalm chapter 10. In some Bibles, particularly some Catholic Bibles, you'll see that they would include Psalm chapter 10 with Psalm chapter 9. So where we might be reading, for example, Psalm 23, the 23rd Psalm, it may not line up with certain Bibles. So if you ever grab a Bible and you're like, this isn't right, go one ahead or one behind, you'll find it. It's there. They just have a different numbering system. So some of them put Psalm 10 with chapter 9. In most Protestant churches, they do not. This one doesn't have a title, but begins with some questions that David has. It says, why do you stand? Why standest thou afar off, O Lord? Why hidest thou thyself in times of trouble? The wicked in his pride doth persecute and vex. Let them be taken in the devices that they have imagined. For the wicked boasteth in his heart's desire, and blesseth the covetous, whom the Lord abhorreth. The wicked, through the pride of his countenance, will not seek after God. God is not in all his thoughts. So as we look in behavior notes there, David is asking, why are you so far away? Have you ever felt that way, that God was so far away? I think we all go through those times. And I think that one of the first things we do is we start to look at what's wrong with me? What have I done to cause this? In this situation, I think that David is asking, is really asking, like, why do you stand so far away? Because I've tried to live a righteous and clean life. I've tried to be a positive member for you, and I don't understand why it feels like you're so far away. As he moves farther, he kind of complains that it seems like the wicked always prevail, that they are blessed, that they have money, they have finances. And truly, when we look at the reason for this chapter, this may have been one that David wrote before he was king, in response to why he sees Saul in his position of authority and power. And if God has chosen me for this role, why do you stand so far away? I'm just trying to do what you want. I'm trying to be a good servant. And I'm trying to be a good servant to you and to Saul. Can you imagine for David to know you're going to be the next king and yet try so hard to please the current king? I think David really did try to please Saul. As a matter of fact, when you look at Saul's death and David's reaction to it, you may the human side of you might go, hooray, Saul's dead, but that was not David's response. And why was that? Because David had a love for Saul? Probably not. David had a love for God, and God had chosen Saul. So if God had chosen Saul, then why did everything spin out of control? Isn't God, omnipotent God, able to control Saul? Why would he have chosen him in the first place? Saul had free will. But I think sometimes we look and we go, God, if you're so smart, if you're so omnipotent, if you're able to see the whole book, and not just the book, but the chapter we're in, why would you have selected Saul in the first place? Knowing how this would pan out. Why would you have, listen, there are questions I want to ask God, not because they're extremely huge theological make or break kind of questions, just questions. God, I'd kind of like to know about the dinosaurs. When we see the bones, what's up? Did Adam and Eve have a navel? I don't know. Did they have a belly button? Why would they have? Questions you want to ask God. And one of them is, God, why would you put these two trees in the garden in the first place? I think that answer is, I wanted them to have free will. I wanted them to make that choice. And Saul had to make that choice. And I think for us, when we look back and we see the situation with Saul, we see that Samson was chosen. Samson was dedicated. But Samson, through his own free will, chose to intermingle with the other religions. He chose the path. We have the benefit of looking at it with hindsight and going, well, they should have known. But at the same time, am I any different? Do I not choose? I mean, honestly, a lot of times, and listen, Some churches are full of super Christians, I guess, because I don't know if I'm not one of them, apparently. But we like to think about, well, these unintentional sins that you fall into, are they always unintentional? Do we sometimes seek out opportunities to be gluttonous, to serve ourselves, to be prideful, to brag, to boast, to gossip, yes. We can talk about it all, but listen, we're just as wicked as they are. We talked a lot about it in our Sunday school, and Dad brought it up this morning during hymn service, that I am the same as a murderer, but God. And we talked in our Sunday school this morning is, when I stand before God and he says, give an account, I can't say, well, God, I want you to look at it. Yes, there's some bad things, but I ask you to forgive me, and so those are gone. You said you'd forget them, so you can't count those, God. And that's your law. But listen, look at all the good stuff. And God's response would be what? What is that? So what? And so I don't want to stand in front of God and say, God, look at my good deeds. All I want to be able to do is stand before God and say, Jesus. Aaron, do you plead guilty or not guilty? I plead Jesus. That's all I can plead. Jesus. God, please, when you look at me, see your son. Don't see me. Because my very best is not worthy. And so we see where David is saying, I'm trying to do the right thing. It seems like the wicked prosper. It seems like if you were such a mighty and powerful God, all-knowing, all-powerful, all-present, that you would have stopped this. Why do you allow it? That's the question. This is why the song, Farther Along. I don't understand it right now, but I will farther along. Why did David have to be a good servant to be a good king?
You can't be a good leader unless you're a good follower.
And he was following a bad leader, but still willing to follow and serve. Isn't that silly?
He was following him because Saul was God's choice.
Right.
And
He wasn't following Saul for Saul's ability. He was following Saul because God had chosen and ordained Saul. And I wonder sometimes, anybody, I don't want anybody to raise their hand, but have you worked with people who were wicked? You don't have to raise your hand or shake your head, but you thought, I'll be honest, you almost thought I almost have a requirement to disobey them. Yeah, if they're asking you to commit sin or do something illegal or, immoral, yeah. But then I also have the command to serve. And I think that truly David ended up being an example for Saul. Imagine that moment when here's David trying to play a harp and trying to soothe the beast. Because here's the deal, we like to look at the fact that David was this huge warrior and Saul was, Saul was a mighty warrior.
Yes.
We kind of get the idea that he was kind of he was the biggest dude in the land. In fact, that's how the priest saw him when he was trying to hide. He was like, Saul, you stick out like a sore thumb. You're like Jethro over here, okay? And so here's Saul, who in the midst of this harp playing, grabs a spear and chucks it at David. How many times would he miss that shot? Because Saul has killed his 1,000. But for David, here's a spear sticking in the wall, to not grab it out of the wall and chuck it right back, that's my response. You want to heave a spear at me? Guess what? Brace yourself. That wasn't David's response. And I think Saul had the benefit of seeing, as a leader, seeing a good servant in front of him. And so,
Well, David had the opportunity in the cave
multiple times.
to kill Saul. And his David's servants, his men asked him, why didn't you kill him? He goes, I can't touch God's anointed. That's it.
Yep.
It's not my place to kill God's anointed.
And in fact, there's two different accounts of Saul and Jonathan's death. But one of the accounts, his own men killed Saul and Jonathan because they were wounded. And David had them killed. Because that was not your place. That was God's anointed. And so we see where David is asking the question, why do you stand so far off, O Lord? Why do you hide in times of trouble? Anybody ever remember the poem Footprints in the Sand? But you ever thought that, it's when it's at its darkest moment, God, you go and play hide and seek. I can't find you. I've said it before. Listen, God is the world's worst hide and seek player. Great at seek, horrible at hide. You can't look anywhere and not see God. The problem is we don't see him how we expect to see him. That was the problem the Jews had. They could see God. They weren't looking for God. Not like that. He says, why do you hide in times of trouble? I'm convinced that that's when God shows himself the most. But the feeling, I think that we can all agree with the way David feels. It feels as though you hide when I'm in trouble. The wicked in his pride persecutes the poor. Now we look at this word, the wicked, and I want us to kind of look in this chapter beyond just bad people. Because I think the wicked at its core is Satan and his minions. And I think that this is something that we don't just look at humans, but look at the principalities and the powers in our world. Why does Satan, why do his minions, why do they, in their pride, is why did Satan fall from heaven? What was his sin? Pride. And who do they persecute? The poor. The weak. Or us. But are we really poor? We're rich. But he says, the wicked in his pride persecutes the poor. Let them be caught in the plots which they have devised. When I hear that, I always think about Haman. Here's Haman. He's building the gallows. He's going to make him super tall and super big. And it's going to be a big event. And only one person ever hung from him. Well, yeah, it was family. For the wicked boasts of his heart's desire. We talked in our Sunday school this morning as well that we agree that sin has always been in our culture. It's always been in our society. It's always been in our world. But I've never seen it this in your face. We talk about there's nothing new under the sun. I think for a lot of young people, they may say, well, you don't understand what it's like. There's internet. These things are so easily accessible. Yes, because it's so in your face. And so one of the things I brought up, I said, for most of my class, they're too young to remember, but do you remember the show Will and Grace when it first came out?
Oh, yeah.
And everybody's reaction to that? Boom! Now you can't watch a string of commercials and not see it in your face. In their pride, they plot and they boast in their heart's desire. The wicked, he blesses the greedy and renounces the Lord. And that's not L, little o, little r, that's Jehovah God. Renounces God. The wicked in his proud countenance does not seek God. God is in none of his thoughts. So I got a question. If the wicked does not seek God and does not think of God, then what should the righteous do?
I should think on God continually.
Do we?
We're supposed to pray.
We're supposed to.
We're supposed to pray for
And
them.
we're supposed to seek him. But do we? I'll be honest, I get busy. And then I go, why was I busy with that? Have you ever worked on a project and for some reason you were stumped and then all of a sudden you go, why did that take so long? That was so... We get so busy sometimes and then we go, you know what? It ends up being Martha and Mary. I'm so busy I didn't even get to enjoy them. I think for pastors it's that way. I'm so busy trying and working and planning and gathering, and it's hard to just kind of relax. I mean, I would love to just send Rex and Janet to the beach and retreat, and you guys just go have fun for a week, knock yourselves out. Because it is. It's a constant give, and you become so busy, you almost, by default, become a Martha. I want to be a Mary. I desire God to be a Mary. But by default, I feel like other people won't step up, so I gotta Martha this out. When the truth is, no, somebody will step up. It don't have to be all of us. And in the same way in our households, we kind of feel the same way, don't we? Well, if I don't do it, I mean, I know my wife, she looks at me about dishes and laundry. If I don't do it, he ain't gonna do it. I'll do it. When I run out of underwear, I will do the laundry. When there are no spoons, I will wash spoons.
Aaron, I think a lot of Aaron and I feel the same way. We would have a family dinner or whatever at the house. So we're busy cleaning the house, clean the bathrooms, get everything, and then we preparing the food, the meal or whatever. And we're so busy that our family gets there, and we really don't have time to sit down and enjoy them. And in the last couple of years, okay, if the house is not real clean, big deal.
Well, and two, and not, this is not to, we're all family, right? We can share?
Yes.
Okay. My father loves his expression of love is in his cooking, his meals, his food, things like that. But I can remember as a young person and he's so much better now than he used to be, but Mom will attest to this, that family functions, he was a bear. Growling and barking, and it's like, I don't even want to do this. Because he wanted it to be such a memorable and fun experience that it became unfun.
Yeah.
And I think in our Christian walk, we do this all the time. We get so busy that it becomes a drudgery. And it's not fun anymore. And I think that's where God would say, I want this to be fun. I want you to seek me. Because the bottom line, I seek you. I come and look for you. I try to show you little robins flying down the mountain. Do you really think that there was just a chance that you happened to see them flying down the mountain? I did that for you. Just so that you would see me. So that you would know spring is coming, rebirth. It's all starting again. And so sometimes we miss these things, and I think David was missing them because he wasn't really looking for them. He was tired, exhausted, on the run. It didn't make sense. This isn't what it was supposed to be. I remember as a little boy keeping the sheep and Samuel coming out and pouring oil on my head, not even really understanding what was going on. And Dad, the brothers were all talking about how I was going to be the king. And I remember going to camp and seeing this big giant, and he was growling and barking at our people and calling us dogs. And I said, who do you think you are? I remember, and now I'm hiding in a cave. And every person I slew was for Saul. It's not supposed to be this way. Why do you hide? Why are you so far away? I don't think that David is unlike a lot of us. I'm trying to do everything right. I'm not doing everything right, but I'm trying. So bear in mind, when we look at the wicked, we think of bad people. And I'll say again, however, consider Satan, his demons, as top of the wicked list. And they scheme and plot and devise traps. Consider they're also described as having pride and persecuting the poor. They bless the greedy because it harms the humble in the giving. Let that sink in. Why would Satan and the wicked bless the greedy? Because it harms the humble and the giving. They renounce the Lord and do not seek him. He is not in their thoughts. A highlighted part I says, we immediately recognize that anyone who renounces the Lord is sinful. Yet the psalmist here puts the one who does not seek God and the one who does not think about God in the same category as the one who renounces God. Men do not seek God. This is a great sin. Men do not think about God. This is also a great sin. Man has obligations to his God and as his creator and sovereign, and it is a sin to neglect it. Man commits these sins because of his proud countenance, ignoring God as an expression of our independence and perceived equality or superiority to him. I think that we live in a society where people say, I don't hate God, I just don't think about it. God says, well, you may not think about me, but you ought to. As I think about you, and I am a God of justice, and you are here for a purpose. But we live in a culture that really says, I'm here for me, it's about me, it's about me and mine, and that's life. I'm born, I try to make as much money as I can, and have things, and then I die. What a wasted experience. Verse 5, he says, the wicked, his ways are always prospering. Are they?
They seem like it.
It seems like it. How many miserable rich people do you know? The richer you get, the more troubles you get. When I look at it, consider back in Abraham's day, what it was like to be rich. 5,000 head of camel. You want to keep up with that? Ask somebody with 5,000 cattle right now how this winter storm was. You may be rich in cattle. Do you seem rich? No, it seems like a lot of work. Not to mention, you want to have 1,000 wives? It's a lot of work. It's a lot of mother-in-laws, that's right. It seems like their way is always prospering, but it's not. And what I found is the more money people make, the more they want to make. I've seen a lot of people. I went to California a long time ago to see some family, and they said, we work so hard, we never get to enjoy what's here. I said, well, we have a lot of people that visit in Arkansas too. And, we do try to enjoy it and kayak and hike and stuff like that. We don't hike near like the Gregories do. You guys are crazy, but at the same time, I mean, not crazy. You're motivated. Sorry. Yes, but sometimes we get so busy with life and things like that, we forget to take advantage of the things that are right out our backyard. The White River is an amazing river, and it's right there. Ozark Mountains are right there, forest right there. We were driving last Sunday, in fact, because we didn't have church. We're like, hey, let's go drive around. So, let's go see if we can get in trouble. We almost did. We went down the road that was closed. He said it had big road closed, and he goes, I need to put like a seriously under it. Here's your sign.
And you followed him?
Oh yeah, well, I was with him. But as we're driving, I keep seeing all these little cutout camp spots. Now, where were we at? Okay, so I see all these little campgrounds, and not campgrounds, but just like little pull-off spots. I'm like, can you just camp here anytime? He goes, yeah. I was like, why are we doing this? It's right here. It's always been available.
7 days at a time.
Well, it doesn't have a public toilet. So. It says his ways are always prospering. They're not, but it seems that way. Your judgments are far above, out of his sight. It's almost David saying, it seems like they're always prospering, but I understand that you are the authority, you have the judgment, but it's so far out of his sight, it's so far beyond. And in fact, in the New Testament, Jesus said, it seems like God is lax because he will not come, but at the same time, it's his grace and his mercy. Your judgments are far above, out of his sight. For all his enemies, he sneers at them. He has said in his heart, I shall not be moved. I shall not be moved. Different one. I shall never be in adversity. His mouth is full of cursing and deceit and oppression. Under his tongue is trouble and iniquity. Whoa, hold on a second. I thought it was a lot better when we were just talking about wicked people doing wicked things. But the wicked things you're talking about are talking, running his mouth, cursing, deceit, lying, oppression, bullying, bigotry, hatred. Under his tongue is trouble and iniquity.
Aaron, it also says he says in his heart. It's not even things that actually come out. It's things he's thinking, without verbalizing it. So that it really hits home.
It also tells us that what comes out of your mouth
Right. Out of the mouth, the heart speaks. It says we are impressed at how often the wicked speech of men, which is often today regarded as no sin at all, is that true? Is regarded as sin in Psalms. Cursing, lying, threatening, troubling, and evil speech are all destructive. They flow from the one who does not believe that God will hold him or her accountable. Such cursing men are cursed men. This wicked person, he wants no prophet to teach them, no priest to atone for him, no king to conduct for him. He needs neither a Christ to redeem, nor a spirit to sanctify. He believes no providence, adores no creator, and fears no judge. If you had to put one sentence on society in the world today, it's a pretty good one. The wicked, he sits in the lurking places of the villages. In the secret places, he murders the innocent. His eyes are secretly fixed on the helpless. He lies in wait secretly as a lion in his den. He lies in wait to catch the poor. He catches the poor when he draws him into his net. So he crouches, he lies low, that the helpless may fall by his strength. He has said in his heart, God has forgotten. He hides his face, he will never see. So again, I encourage us to see the plots and schemes of the wicked one. I truly believe we are seeing some of the last days played out in front of us. But if you think about it, is there an overtly evil attack? I mean, is it like, do you have like the headline that goes, Satan says today, ... Boogeyman. Do you see that? Is it overt? No, it's subtle, isn't it? It's the chipping away. But, in fact, if you don't think that there is a subtle erosion of our society, our culture, our standards, what we even value as sin anymore, imagine if your great or great-great-grandparents were here today and saw society. Would it be overt? It would not be subtle. Do you see what I'm saying? It's that whole frog in the hot water theory. We've been around it so long, we've become numb to it. But if my great-grandma was here today, she would gasp at what's allowed on television. And it probably would not be allowed in the house. Truly. But boy, that's going to throw some people off. Throw out the TV. Yeah. It's evil. No, she's right.
Well, back years ago, some of the old timers thought that. They didn't have to be.
And they were right. There are good things. There are good things about internet. There are good things about technology. There are great things. There are also bad traps and bad devices and schemes as well. I wonder what those people would say about our people in society. But I'll tell you another one. I wonder what they would say about our church. It's easy to talk about great-grandma looking at the TV. What would they say about church today? Would they see behavior of people as overtly evil? Have we grown so accustomed to the toleration of evil that we have whitewashed it and accepted it as less evil thing? What would they say about the music on the radio? The sexual immorality on the television? What would they say about our churches with fog machines and laser shows when they weren't necessary to entertain the presence of God?
I would say the same about us wearing pants.
Oh, yeah.
You know, Aaron, I can remember when they first started playing, you know, like playing all over the piano instead of just playing chords, just like, and I can remember my great grandma saying that was evil. So the next thing you know, they'll be up there dancing. I mean, you know, there's just so many things that I can think, and I'm sure, boy, you know, it's older ones. There are things that I can remember real well that went on that wasn't accepted at all, but now we think nothing about it.
Well, and that becomes, if I don't address it or deal with it, then it becomes a form of acceptance. And we talked about that again this morning as well. Like we talked about with, you know, if you're on a diet and you mess up your diet, you're going to start your diet again on Monday. But like, for example, with my dog, I'm trying to potty train. I can't do the same treatment with him. If he pees on the floor, I've got to address it and address it immediately. Otherwise, I'll just wait till Monday, just let him do his thing.
He's not gonna wait till Monday to do it again.
He will pee in the house for the rest of his life. Why? Because you accepted it. And yet we treat the sin the same way. At some point, I'll deal with it. At some point, I'm going to deal with this addiction. At some point, I'm going to deal with my habit. At some point, when God says, now is the time. I'm not saying you're not going to have an accident and pee on the floor. It's going to happen. But don't wait till Monday and just continue to do it. And yet, that's how we kind of operate, isn't it? Oh, I don't want to say anything, I don't want to offend anybody. I'll just kind of let it. Now, that's not the same time. I'm not saying we need to go out there and go, Philistine, heathen. I mean, but there are things allowed in my house that wouldn't have been allowed in my parents' house. There are things allowed in their house that wouldn't have been allowed in my grandparents' house.
Walked up to somebody now and told him that was wrong, where would you be? He'd be laughed out of the house.
Sure. I remember as a young person, I was allowed to go to my senior prom. It was the only dance I was allowed to go to. And I remember a lot of kids that I went to church. You can't go to dances? Why? My parents don't allow it. It's just an opportunity. And they looked at me like I might as well have another arm going out of my forehead. Did I miss anything? No, not really. But we start to subtly break these things down. And here's what I found about Satan. He is way more patient than you are. His long game is a lot longer than yours. And if I truly believe that if he's not allowed to get Billy, I'll just wait for Levi. You know what I'm saying? That his long game, he's got some patience. And it's a lot better than ours. So to understand our enemy helps us to understand how to fight our enemy. And then David says, arise, O Lord. It's almost, wake up. O God, lift up your hand. Do not forget the humble. Why do the wicked renounce God? He has said in his heart, you will not require an account. This is almost, he's asking, he's like, God, would you give him a little bit of judgment? But I truly feel like a lot of the case, I think that David didn't want Saul crushed by the hand of God. I think David wanted God to discipline and correct Saul. Truly. And so I think that when our prayer sometimes for the wicked is, God, judge them. But I think in this case, David's response was not, God, eliminate Saul and smash him like a bug. It was correct him, fix him. I've prayed that God would fix people all the time, and several times in my life, and found I was the one that needed fixing. But I've prayed a lot that God fix them, fix them, fix them. It's almost like they don't even care. They don't. It says, but you have seen. You, God, you have seen. Now I want you to understand this. He says, arise, wake up, O Lord. And then he says, but you have seen. So you see how he's almost going against his own comment. He's saying, it seems like you're far off. It seems like you're asleep. Wake up. Because I know, even though it seems this way, I know my faith, my heart, my relationship with you, my knowledge of you is this. You have still seen. It may not feel like it. It may not seem like it. But you still see me. You observe trouble and grief. And you repay it by your hand. The helpless commits himself to you. You are the helper of the fatherless. So who is the fatherless? When we look at that and read that, don't you look at an orphan, right? Well, this must be an orphan. He's talking about the fatherless, a small child, a small orphan. But I want you to understand this, that in this life, I know that ultimately God is my defender. But I know I know in this life, Yolanda is my defender. But my ultimate defender is right there, is my dad. I know my dad well enough to know that he would go to battle. But see, my dad doesn't have a father on this life. So in a lot of ways, once we get to a certain age and our defenders are gone, it's just me and God. Who will stand up for me? And David says, you will, God. You are the helper of the fatherless. It's not just a little orphan. If I have troubles and I have a problem where I'm trying to figure out something around the house, who do you think I call? Dad, does this sound right? Rex, does Levi call you and say, hey, Dad? Who do you call? God says, or David says, God, you help the fatherless. Break the arm of the wicked and the evil man. Now, I get this image, snapping arms, but that's where the power is. He says, make them impotent, take away their power. Seek out his wickedness until you find none. When Jesus comes back in his reign, will there be wickedness? He will drive it out. He will seek it until there is none. So here we see David is also speaking prophetically. Seek out wickedness until there is none. And then he speaks to his faith. Have you ever had to speak to your faith? David does. He said, the Lord is king forever and ever. I think that that's interesting that David would use that phrase, the Lord is king forever and ever, because David is supposed to be the king. Was he not ordained, anointed? And David doesn't say, Lord, you are God forever and ever. You are king. David understands his role. It's almost David saying, I know where I stand. I wish Saul understood. But you are king, reign. You are reigning. You are the lawmaker. You're the lawgiver. You are the authority. You are the king forever and ever. The nations have perished out of his land. Lord, you have heard the desire of the humble. You will prepare their heart. I thought preparing the heart was my job. I had to be fertile soil, right? But David said, you, God, will prepare the heart. Well, that's different. I never really considered that. Whenever I'm drawn to pray, do you feel drawn to pray? Drawn to spend time with God? I believe that is the Spirit preparing you and preparing your heart to give, to receive.
And I feel like it's the same way with salvation. You can get up anytime you want to, say, the Lord, come in. But if you don't have that drawing, it don't mean nothing.
Right.
It's not going to stay. You got to have that Holy Spirit drawing you into it before it actually means anything.
Sure. It says, you prepare the heart. You will cause your ear to hear. Even though my cries, it seems like you're deaf and not listening, that you're so far away, you cause your ear to hear. To do justice to the fatherless and the oppressed, that the man of the earth may oppress no more. Let's take a quick break.